My name is Evan Irwin. This is Patrick Chapin. I make the Magic Show, and he is just awesome, as Patrick is. And anyway, we figured we would start out this talk with a little Q&A for myself. Now, normally you guys, if you watch the Magic Show, I will interview a cavalcade of pros and ask them all the same questions or similar questions, and then sort of and go through their answers independently. But I figured it would be more interesting if I would ask him the questions I would normally ask one-on-one in front of you guys. This way we can sort of have a roundtable discussion. If you guys have anything you want to add, feel free to raise your hand and we'll sort of expand on it. But for me, I think, Patrick, the first question I have for you, sir, is tell me how you feel about treasure hunt.
When I was a boy, my grandfather used to take me to the beach hunting for treasure. We never found any, but I think that a lot of people are going to be finding a lot of treasure now. I think that if you could just go hang out with your good buddy Jace, you can go to the Halomar Depths, hunt for treasure, I think it's going to work out really well. I think it's the best card drawer in Type 2, other than Jace, the Mind Sculptor, since, I don't know, is Fact or Fiction? Like, that was a while ago. Yeah, I guess Fact or Fiction, maybe Deep Analysis, probably Fact or Fiction.
Well, I was reading someone last night discussing how unhappy they were with treasure hunt and how it was a crap card and how it was horrible. And I remember that the way that you explained it to me that sort of got through the most was when you were explaining that it sort of, at worst, it cycles for 2 mana.
Okay, sure. I guess then the breakdown for treasure hunt is, to start off, you're paying 2 mana to draw a card, right? Which is sort of like cycling. But instead of getting the spell option, you have the option to get a whole bunch of, I guess, lands that you discover when you're hunting for treasure. And the ratio of the ratio of cards you draw is it's a function of your mana base, and a typical mana base will cause you to draw about 1.75 cards off of a treasure hunt. So a lot of people get hung up on the fact that when they draw a bunch of cards, most of them are land. But the thing is, all those cards you're drawing that are land, you would have had to draw phase those lands for the next X number of turns anyway, you know? And over time, the number of spells you draw off of treasure hunt is actually directly proportional to your mana base. Like, it's just, you draw the same ratio of spells to land as you would off of divination, you know? Because divination, you draw exactly 2 cards each time. The only variable is how many of those cards are land and how many of those cards are spells. Treasure hunt, the variable is how many cards you draw, but the fixed quantity is how many spells you're going to draw. You're always going to draw 1. And on the average, if your mana base, if your deck is like 40% mana, then you're going to end up drawing 1.75 cards off of each treasure hunt. So if you cast 4 treasure hunts, it'll be like you drew 7 cards, and lo and behold, 4 will be spells and 3 will be land on the average. You know, which averages out to the same as divination. The point is that if you look at it as drawing you 1.75 cards for 2 mana, it's already better than divination. And I know a lot of people don't like divination, but I mean, it's another way to think of it is that it's comparable to Sign of Blood. Now, Sign of Blood is harder to cast. You have to pay the 2 life and whatnot, but you get 2 cards. This you get 1.75 cards, but it's somewhat on the same power curve as Sign of Blood if you don't try, although it is in a better color. But if you do try, it's absolutely just unbelievable. It's like how Counterbalance and Sensei's Divining Top make each other way more powerful than the sum of their parts. It's on the average, if you just do nothing else besides just Halomar Depths and then Treasure Hunt, you're going to draw 3.05 cards on the average in a deck that has 40% mana, which like you might say, oh, you're using 2 cards. The Halomar Depths is still in play. It's like you just spent 3 mana, but instead of drawing 2 off of divination, you draw at least 3 cards. So, I mean, the difference between 2 and 3 cards, it's like, would you play with a card that costs 1 blue, draw 3? I mean, you probably love that card, right? And Treasure Hunt with Halomar Depths is a lot like that. And it has even better upside. You can split it over 2 turns, where you can go turn 1 Halomar Depths, turn 2 Treasure Hunt. And either half of the combo is really strong on their own, you know, and they both dig to other pieces of the combo. It's not that unusual for people to Halomar Depths, find Treasure Hunt, and then Treasure Hunt into another Halomar Depths, and so on, and it just starts chaining together. And that doesn't even, I mean, that's not even counting if you Jace the Mind Sculptor. Because if you ever activate Jace with Treasure Hunt, then it's just like, now you actually are getting Ancestral Recalls every turn.
I think I did average 4 to 5 cards per treasure hunt using Jace, which was unfair. But which segues directly into now. All right, so tell me about Jace. Tell me how You said that you thought you might have spoken a little too early. You know, you let the cat out of the bag a little earlier than you may have should have.
No. I mean, like, we knew that Jace was going to be just absolutely, completely amazing. You know, like, we knew it was going to be one of the best few cards in the standard. And a lot of people actually gave me a hard time when I, you know, like 5 or 6 weeks ago, I said, Jace, whenever it is Jace was first spoiled, I said, Jace is going to be one of the best cards in the standard. This card's just absolutely amazing. I never even played with it yet. But after having played with it, I now realize that it's much better than I thought it was going to be. Like, no, I mean,
can it be overhyped?
Well, yeah, I guess it could be overhyped. If you think it's better than Skull Clamp, you're probably wrong. But I'm not sure yet. Like, I think Jitte and Cryptic Command might be better, for at least a Type 2 context. But it might not be. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I'm trying to not be biased because it's like the epitome of the kind of card that I would enjoy.
Right.
But it sure does look like best. Like, it's like, I don't know.
It felt so unfair to play that card.
I mean, like, try playing it.
Absolutely.
Treasure Hunt Unlimited versus Constructed.
Oh, I don't know. Treasure Hunt Unlimited doesn't seem that. I mean, it seems okay. It seems like if you're in the market for, you know, draw 1.6 cards or 1.7 cards, 1.75 cards for 2 mana, especially if you have to hit landfalls. It's just that in Limited you never set it up that much, you know. So I think it could be good. Maybe it's even better than that. It's just that Zendikar Worldwake is a really aggressive draft format, and if you have a deck that isn't doing anything on 2 mana, then Treasure Hunt's just great because it is just extra value on a spot on the curve you weren't going to use. But a lot of the drafts that I do, I end up wanting to spend my 2 castle costs, spend my 2 drop a lot of the time playing beatdown creatures. Now, I mean, maybe in time I'll end up playing the, you know, just as a card drawer. I mean, card advantage is good, but I'm not sure yet. I don't think it's as clear cut because I don't think the card is off the charts unless you try, you know.
Here's something I thought was interesting. How would you combat Jace? Now that we know Jace is as good as it is, Treasure Hunt, Halimar Depths, those sort of the trifecta of good blue cards now, what would you do if you were to, you know, for example, say you couldn't afford Jace, what would you invest in otherwise to stop the Jace?
I would probably just play an inexpensive format like Extended or Vintage. No, I don't know. If I couldn't afford Jaces, and I'm committed to not trying to trade to get them or anything, like I'm just on the, I'm not going to play Jace even though everyone else is playing.
Maybe they just don't like it for some reason.
Like, okay, sure. If you're Jace averse, well, there's this guy, Bloodbraid Elf. He can solve a lot of problems. I think Bloodbraid Elf's a good way to go. And Tectonic Edge. I think that the 3 different archetypes in Type 2 are Bloodbraid Elf, Jace the Mind Sculptor, and Tectonic Edge. And I don't think that Tectonic Edge or Bloodbraid Elf need Jace, so I think that it's perfectly reasonable to not play Jace.
Tell me about Tectonic Edge.
I think Tectonic Edge is going to be the 2nd or 3rd best card in Worldwake, and it's, like, as Ken said, it's the definition of a spike-only card. Nobody likes that card at all, except for like 1% of the population who looks at it and it's like, wow, if I can meet these 3 different requirements, I can have a really bad wasteland and try to mana screw my opponent. But no, like, I don't know, I think it's still super, super powerful because in Type 2, what if your opponent, like, which decks are not putting 4 land into play? You know, like, I mean, who doesn't want to use the man lands? And any man land you could activate under normal circumstances is going to involve you having enough land in play that you could get wrecked by Tectonic Edge. You know, I think Tectonic Edge is, it's the real deal. Like, it's going to be, it's going to help reduce the number of colors people play, and it's going to help keep Cruel Ultimatum in check, and it's going to help make Everflowing Chalice the 2nd or 3rd best card in Worldwake.
So tell me about Everflowing Chalice.
Well, I think that there are some people, foolish people, and I know that you and I are not one of those 2 people.
We are not, absolutely not.
There's some people who did not realize how exciting Everflowing Chalice is, and how, when it was previewed, we were actually being showed one of the most powerful and one of the cards that Blue Magic players have dreamt about having for so long, you know? A good Signet, you know?
Somebody would call that boring. Some people would say that was not an exciting preview.
I mean,
those people are idiots.
All right, have you ever taken an extra turn?
It's happened.
When you play Everflowing Chalice, it's like taking an extra turn. That's the whole idea. That's why Signets are so amazing. I mean, there's a lot of people who play Rampant Growth in their junk decks. They don't really want the mana fixing. They're just doing it to get an extra land in the battlefield. Right? Because right now, accelerating your mana is so powerful, and nobody except Green has had access to that for a long time, and Green's not that good, so nobody does it very much, you know. But now good, honest blue mages get to do it.
Honest blue mages.
Absolutely. The
They
ones who
exist?
play Everflowing Chalice, which I love the fact that it doesn't work with Cascade. You know, it's yet another way to help keep Blood Great Elf in check.
There you go. Basically. Well, another question, sort of to change the subject a little bit. What is the biggest misconception about Magic Pros?
But Magic Pros,
Yeah. Because there's a whole subculture of professional Magic players, and they sort of exist in their own little world, you know, of being good.
well, I definitely think that there's a misconception that every pro is a jerk, or that pros don't have fun when they play Magic, or that pros are playing Magic for a paycheck. Let me give you a hint. You know what happens to pros who play Magic for a paycheck? They start playing a game that pays a lot of money, like poker or the stock market or gambling or something, you know? I mean, I guess, yeah, pros also, if you think that the pros don't sit around doing casual drafts or all that kind of crazy stuff, I was hanging out with Ben Rubin and Brian Kibler and Mark Herbert Halls, a whole bunch of people, Matt Sperling. We were hanging out in San Diego last week, drafting with my custom-made set of just cards that I had made up, you know? Taking a break from the other formats because they like to play for fun, too. It's just that a lot of people have different ideas about what fun is, so when they see somebody else who's doing something that isn't the same kind of fun they have, they say, oh, well, that can't be fun. I play for fun because I like to play to lose. I mean, I like to play with cards that are bad and not try to get better.
All right, so now that you are a successful author, Next Level Magic has done very well, and congratulations on your success. Where do you go from that? Where do you go from here? You know what I mean?
I'm going on a boat! Wait, no. I'm actually, let's see, I could probably tell you. You can always just edit this out and everybody here not say anything if this ends up not being public information yet.
Right.
I'm actually releasing my a paperback book in, I think, like a month or something like that. A 420-page expanded version of Next Level Magic. Next Level Magic, my ebook, has 214 pages. And reformatting it added a little bit of length, but there's like 40% new content because I just kept adding more stuff. I mean, stuff's happened since then. Plus there's M10 rules changes. Plus there's just other stuff that I forgot to talk about that kind of like try to expand it a little bit, and just a few more stories from just different time, different events, and different encounters like over my career.
Well, I thought recently you wrote an article that no one really paid much attention to. You wrote The Theory of Everything. And then no one talked about it, and everyone sort of just let it go. And I was like, I thought was a really fascinating theory. Can you talk about the theory of everything?
Sure. I mean, we talk about everything forever.
Well, I mean, you sort of summed it up as the main thing you do in Magic is you try to continue playing the game. Is that right?
Okay.
That was the gist.
I guess I would put it like this. First, the short answer is, do you like string theory? Because string theory is really interesting. You can talk about it a whole bunch. Right. Absolutely. Now, I'm just curious, because string theory, there's so much to think about, and it's fun to talk about and think about string theory.
Absolutely.
The theory of everything is basically a framework for describing what's going on in the game of Magic, and what people are trying to accomplish, and how one positions themselves to have the best chance to win. And it's nothing more than a different perspective of the same thing that Shmi is talking about, that Flores is talking about, that AJ Sasha is talking about, that Matt Sperling is talking about by not talking about. It's basically in Magic, you have a variety of different resources, and you're trying to accomplish one thing. You're trying to remove your opponent's resource that is his ability or her ability to continue to play the game. You both start with that ability, and you have a certain number of resources that you begin the game with, but do not get more of over time. You get a certain number of resources at the beginning of the game that you get more of over time, and then there are some resources you do not begin with, but you gain over time. And just by the definition of the terms, that describes every single type of resource except for the ones that you don't start with and don't get. But at the beginning of the game, one of the resources you start with is the ability to continue playing the game, which is measured by things like, do you have cards in your library when it's time to draw a card? Do you not have 10 poison counters? Is your life total not 0? Have you not been hit by a door to nothingness lately? You know? And everything you're doing is manipulating your resources to try to give yourself the option to deny that option to your opponent. Because you can always stop. You can stop playing the game, but you have to make your opponent stop. And in order to make them stop, you're manipulating things like card advantage and tempo But a lot of the confusion comes with trying to figure out what are card advantage, or what is card advantage, what's tempo, what are all these things, where does life total fit in? And like for instance, is a call the herd token? Is that a card? I think that the better way to look at it is at the beginning of the game you start with resources, cards in your hand that you gain more of over time. And these can, another way to look at card advantage is things that have permanence, things that continue to do whatever it is they're doing, They continue to exist. And you have to evaluate these options, these factors like a call of the herd token or a 0-1 cobalt token. You have to evaluate them in terms of how high quality of an option it is. Like a 0-1 doesn't have as good of options as a 3-3. So you have to, but whenever you're talking about things that create a permanent impact on the game, like Fireman Angel in your graveyard is like a card because it has permanence. Every turn it's doing something, Even a suspend card that comes back every 3 turns, it's like a permanent because it continues to do something. Now, there are some resources you start the game with and don't get more of over time, unless you try. That's like your life total cards in your library. You're not having poison counters situation. Like all these things, they're not going to just replenish on their own. You have to try to get that resource back. But you start the game with plenty of all that. And then the third type is tempo. At the beginning of the game, you don't have any tempo. And a lot of people equate tempo to mana. But mana is just one manifestation of tempo because you can actually gain tempo a variety of other ways. Like for instance, if you hit your opponent with a Rafika the Many, when you have a Finest Hour in play, the additional attack phase it's a form of tempo because it's another thing that it's another resource that you gain over time, the ability to continue to attack your opponent, And basically, all mana is a manifestation of this resource of you get to play 1 land a turn, and you get to untap once a turn. And those together form this system where you're building more and more mana over time. But there are other resources, like the attack phase, Anyway, it's kind of a long subject, but the long and the short of it is that it's just, it's a way of looking at these different resources so that when you're in a situation that you're not familiar with, you can ask yourself, which of these 3 types of resources are we dealing with? So that you can have a familiar framework to work from.
And I can imagine that this is going to be included in the new updated Next Level Magic.
Yeah, but the thing is, the theory of everything is not the theory for everyone. It sounds like, stereo instructions to a lot of people, so it's not vital by any means because it's more of just, it's a way for people to help to stretch their imagination about the game, just to come up with terms to describe certain things and to have a framework that's more logical for what's going on in a game of Magic. When you're playing a game of Magic, it's like there's this underlying system of physics. Like you can feel something changing when you cast Explore on the 2nd turn and put a 3rd land onto the battlefield. You feel like you just did something that defies the normal order of things. And this underlying system of physics is what Flores and Shvi and everybody who's describing these theories, what they're talking about,
Absolutely. So, switching gears a little bit back to Worldwake, tell me what you think about multi-kicker.
Feels good. I like cards that give options.
Do it.
Yeah, I like cards that give you more options, and multi-kicker is the definition of more options.
Okay.
And I like that there's an awful lot of opportunity for people to, play cheap cards that create a small effect but have the possibility of some bigger effect later. Like some of those 1-drops that you could kick a few times. Normally you might not be as interested, but the fact that you have an option later. And you'll still play them as 1-drop a fair amount of the time, but then there's also this interesting decision. Do you want to play your 1/1 Swamp Walker on the 1st turn? Or do you want to play it, do you wait 2 turns to get a 2/2? And I think there's a ton of room for people to play those cards wrong, which, I guess I like from a selfish perspective. There's also, it can help smooth out draws a little bit, because there's no cycling in the set, Right. So it's nice to have some cards that can have functionality when you're a little bit light on mana, because you can just throw it out there and hopefully trade with a 2/1 to buy yourself some time to draw land. Or, if you're a little mana flooded, at least your spells are a little more powerful,
Right. Yeah, it seems like a very natural progression, and I love those mechanics. I just feel like, multi-kicker should have been here for years because it's just, you just keep kicking.
Everything's multi-kicker. The thing about kicker is that,
kicker can be applied everywhere.
Well, there's not very many mechanics in Magic. How many mechanics are there in Magic? There's kicker.
There's only split cards, things that give you more choices, And then ways to play your cards again. Those are the two most
Right.
the two most appealing things you can do with cards that are universally appealing. So
Right, like because
making different kickers all the time.
right, like every split card is sort of. I mean, it's like all the split cards and commands and modal spells and entwine and all those things are just. Here's a card that lets you choose between a couple cards. You know, the hybrid, all that, and then the other mechanic is. Here's a card that lets you play it again. You know, like flashback or buyback, which is also kicker. But yeah, I mean everything's either do it again or have choices about what you do. But so yeah, I think multi-kicker is a natural progression for. I mean, they had to do it at some point, absolutely. And there's a lot more things they could do. They didn't even use very much of the multi-kicker equity. There's so much more they can do with multi-kicker.
I agree. I probably felt they could have done more of this.
Well, no. I think it's good that they did what they did. See, the thing is, there's a lot of room to do things with multi-kicker. Sure. If they did 10 different, totally radical, weird kind of things, none of them would mean as much. The fact that they did it now made it so that the simplistic multi-kicker designs, like every time you kick it, they discard a card, or every time you kick it, gain 2 life, or every time you kick it, you get another Mind Stone. Those cards all seem a lot more interesting because people aren't being blinded by 10 flashy, bizarre ways that they could have used multi-kicker. Right. So I think it's good that they did it the way they did it, you know?
Absolutely. So what non-blue, non-artifact card excites you the most from World Awakening?
You mean like Halimar Depths? No, I guess, I mean...
Technically a blue card.
Well, I say, you chose the word excite. I don't know if I'm excited to lose to Tectonic Edge over and over and over again. I don't know if I build any decks that don't lose to Tectonic Edge, though. Wow. So I think that Tectonic Edge is definitely the most powerful non-blue, non-artifact card in the set. And anybody who doesn't roll with Jund and doesn't want to Jace the Mind Sculptor should look into really aggressive Tectonic Edge decks. You know, like Green-White Knight of Reliquary, or Mono-Red, or Red-Green, or Red-Green-White, or Mono-Black, or Mono-Green. Doesn't matter what you do, Mono-White, whatever it is you're doing, right. Just mana screw some people.
Well, speaking of Mono-Red, I mean, now they've got Core Firewalker. How do you feel about sort of cards that are engineered to completely hose one popular archetype?
You mean like not Core Firewalker? Yeah. Oh, you mean like Core Firewalker?
Like Core Firewalker.
Have you seen Punishing Fire?
I have seen it. It seems good.
Well, no, I mean... I think it's beautiful that Core Firewalker was released when it is.
Oh my god,
the card looks completely awesome. It is completely awesome. If I play white at the next Pro Tour, I'm going to play some Core Firewalkers. Yeah. But if you're a red mage, you shouldn't be discouraged. I mean, it's not that hard to beat a Core Firewalker. Like, what is it you're worried about him doing? Gaining life or blocking? Both? Whatever?
I guess it would be both, right? I mean, that card like hoses all sorts of strategies. I mean, your Hellspark Elementals and your Goblin Guides. And...
Well, you have to. No, there's no question. You have to take into consideration this guy exists. But I mean, is anybody here who plays Mono Red? Type 2? Wow. Okay. You know,
there you go.
Any of you guys sideboard Unstable Footing? Yeah. Like if you just attack with your Goblin Guide, look him in the eye. Look her in the eye. Be like, any blocks? Because if they block, you can just Unstable Footing, and you don't even have to. You don't even have to kicker it. For 1 mana, it makes damage not able to be prevented. That includes protection from red. Your Earthquake, your Volcanic Fallout, that could kill it too. You don't even need to have the Goblin Guide if you don't want to. So if you're just trying to kill the Core Firewalker, Unstable Footing can do that. You can even actually just spend the 5 mana so your opponent gets hit in the face for 5 at the same time, you know? And then as far as blocking, I mean, as far as just the life gain, like if you don't have the creatures, if you're just trying to burn your opponent out, Punishing Fire is it's a good card anyway. I mean, Punishing Fire trades with a lot of things people are doing. You know, it's not the worst burn spell in the world. And if you ever play against somebody who's playing Vampires, I mean, and Vampires is pretty popular, right? And it's going to only be more popular with cards like Tectonic Edge and Urge to Feed. But Punishing Fire destroys them. Malachor Blood Witch, the Nighthawk, I mean, and then on top of that, if you play against a Core Firewalker, every time you hit them, it's, you know, 1 for you, 2 for me. You know, it's like, you get ahead of them. Like every time you burst lightning them, they're like, okay, gain a life. You're like, okay, I'll get back my Punishing Fire, take 2 more. And then they're like, okay, well, I gain a life. And then you can get back more Punishing Fire. I mean, you can, if you only have 1 Punishing Fire going, it at least balances out the Core Firewalker, you know? So,
well, I mean, for me, I would be more excited to play both of them in the same deck. Red-White with Core Firewalker and Punishing Fire.
I mean, that's definitely a reasonable way to go. If you're walking around playing like a Boros Bushwhacker type situation, or if you have any kind of a deck that can support that kind of mana, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, because Earthquake's one of the best cards in Type 2. And Earthquake plus Core Firewalkers, I mean, that's a good combo.
That's pretty sexy. All right. So is Worldwake successful in your eyes? Like, I mean, you know, what makes a set successful versus a failure?
Well, it's certainly not a failure.
Right. Well,
I think
what would make a failure?
I would say that the best description of what a failure would be for Worldwake is if it couldn't live up to Zendikar and M10, and that's a pretty harsh standard, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that Worldwake actually lives up to Zendikar and M10. Now, I think that it's going to be. In the big picture, it's really hard when M10 just revolutionized the way core sets are, and Zendikar had fetch lands. But at the end of the day, Worldwake it's like future sight with regards to the spike factor. There's really powerful cards. There's tons of depth. It's fun. It's perfect for balancing out the limited format. Like, it's beautiful how well it balances out Zendikar Limited, you know? And Zendikar Limited was a fine set too. It was just black and red aggro was a little good.
Yeah.
And Worldwake complements it very, very well. There's there's some good chase cards. There's did I say Jace or? It has. I mean, it's. I would say that there's a few things that could have been done better with Worldwake, like cards that don't go in blue decks could have been better. But which I think is fine, because there's sort of this misconception that blue isn't the best. But I mean. Like, before Worldwake came out, does anybody play red, white, blue, or black, blue, red? I mean, blue's pretty good, right? I mean, you have to suck it up and play cards like Divination, or, you know, Spreading Seas, or the worst counter magic, sure, Courier's Capsule, you know. But blue's always going to be good, you know. But I think this set's fun, and I think a lot of people misevaluate right now some of the cards because they don't realize that a lot of the best cards in the set are sort of. They're ultra spiky cards that people are going to have to just wait until they see a big tournament and they're like, oh, okay, maybe we should just start using all these. And over time, like a few months from now, people are going to start being like, wow, we still need to get more and more of these cards because there's so many different Worldwake cards that are just going to become staples. Like the 5 manlands, every single one of them is on the Treetop Village curve. And it's so crazy because everyone loves Treetop Village. And everyone loves dual lands. I mean, there are 5 cards better than Mutable in this set. And that's not even counting Jace or Chalice or Tectonic Edge. So I think that people just don't appreciate how good those manlands are yet. And the fact that there's 5 of them makes people appreciate each one a little bit less because they don't realize how special it is that every single one of these, the power, like, it is ridiculous how much they push. People are playing those lands where you gain 1 life. Those are good. And instead of gaining 1 life, you can just have the option to just have a Sarah Angel that doesn't get hit by Wrath of God, or you could just have a creature that can fireball your opponent every turn, or you can just have a 3/4 reach creature. I mean, that guy's better than Treetop Village. I don't know, but
but you hit the upper register on that one.
But I'm definitely going to need that on there too. And then Tectonic Edge. I don't think people really appreciate how much of an impact the card's going to have yet. And I think part of that is because very few people get excited about Tectonic Edge because, you know, first of all, 98% of people don't even want that type of thing, and the other 2% are the people who lose to it. So it's going to take a little bit, but eventually it's going to really help stuff like mono green, mono white, mono red, or green white. It's going to help those type of decks be able to compete because they're going to have this nice way to keep control decks honest. You know?
Well, what I thought was interesting was yesterday I was playing against one of the players here, Mike, and he showed me some delicious technology I think is going to have a resurgence, and that is Anathemancer. Anathemancer just seems like the complete nuts right now.
I don't know if you realize this, but Lorwyn block, Shadowmoor block, rotated out.
Right. Of course. But Anathemancer seems pretty good. You are a very big proponent of mental magic. Can you tell me a little bit about your love for mental magic and how that may help you be a better Magic player? Do you think it does? Is it sort of just memorization?
Well, it can. You're still playing Magic, but it's like it can expand your creativity quite a bit, and it can help make you. I think it might actually be. It can actually help make you a better deck builder than a player, because the situations that come up in mental magic involve a completely different type of thought process than the situations that come up in a regular game.
Can you just real quick give an overview of mental magic for those who aren't familiar?
Alright, mental magic is basically, you pick up a stack of cards. Most people play with just a random leftover from a draft, but some people intentionally design, their stack to have certain cards in it. But the idea is to have a bunch of just generic casting costs spread out through every different combination of casting costs, so that when you play, you and your opponent can each draw 7 cards at random, and just play a game where every single card is whatever you want it to be at that casting cost. And you also have the ability to play a card face down once per turn as a land that taps for a mana of any color. And a basic land that taps for a mana of any color and doesn't have a type. And most people play something like legacy rules, 1.5, legacy rules, so that people aren't just going, okay, I have a fast bond. And,
Right.
But,
so legacy ban list, but...
Yeah, like legacy ban list. And then you just play every card as whatever you want, and you can never play the same card twice. You or your opponent. If you play a card, they can't play that card anymore. And then there's a whole bunch of little house rules that people have to agree on because of the degeneracy that follows. Like, for instance, the major question people have to decide is, do you count cards in the graveyard as what they are, or can they be what you want them to be? Because back in the day, people used to say, oh, if you have a squee in your graveyard, if you have any card that's 2 in a red, you can just pick it up, And the thing is, Magic's got a lot more graveyard cards now than it used to. And I was actually trying to prove a point to somebody at the National Championships a little while ago. They were talking about how, oh no, that graveyard stuff isn't that good. And so I just played Dredge and then comboed off on turn 2 or 3 every game.
That'll show up.
And if you just Dredge, it's like... But the point is, the best way, in my opinion, is to either just ban Dredge or to have the graveyard not do anything at all. And then you just have to make up different situations. You have to just decide what seems reasonable for a situation. Like, for instance, you shouldn't be able to search your deck. And if you duress your opponent, you should have to take a card that actually is the appropriate type. But then you just play a game of Magic, and it's actually really interesting because you end up using a lot more cards than you normally would, and there's a lot less variance because every card can just be whatever you want it to be, And for the most part, with that casting cost. But the reason I think it doesn't necessarily doesn't help your tournament Magic playing skills that much is because mental Magic games turn into these inbred control card advantage battles. If you make the format not about a degenerate combo, then it just becomes about force voiding your opponent's zap and stuff like that,
Which who can remember the most cantrips?
Well, you have to know that, to compete at high stakes mental Magic, you definitely have to know all of the cantrips,
High stakes.
Yeah.
$100 mental Magic game.
No, high stakes. $100.
No, that's nothing.
No, we don't play for money anyway. We play for trophies made out of solid gold,
Right. Not money. Absolutely not. Well, you were talking about this set that you've made, and people have played it here. Can you tell us a little bit sort of about your experiences developing and designing that?
I don't know. I just like to make custom sets. I don't know. Designing Magic cards is like my favorite thing to do with Magic cards. Like compared to deck building or playing Magic, or I just really like designing Magic cards.
Cool.
Actually, I kind of like developing Magic cards. I design Magic cards only as a means to be able to develop them.
Nice. Well, that's all I got for me personally. Are there any questions from the audience that you would like to discuss with Mr. Chapin?
What's the sets have you developed now?
Oh, I don't know. You're talking about just on my own?
Yeah.
It's sort of a continuing process. Every so often I just make another one, and sometimes I borrow ideas from previous ones. I'm just trying to stretch my creative muscle and learn the craft of design better and better,
What's your favorite theme that you've designed so far?
What is my favorite theme?
Yeah, I don't know. What kind of themes have you done? I don't know.
I did a set based on artifacts back in the 90s.
Right.
Did a gold set, a graveyard set, a set with this mechanic called Morph.
Because those who aren't aware, Patrick did actually work for Wizards R&D for.
I guess in the end, I think my favorite ones are just the ones that are lots and lots of card advantage and bounce. But I guess as far as which ones I have most pride in are, I did a set where there was this new zone that I guess now is functionally the same as Exile, that used Exile as a resource and there was a variety of ways where cards would end up in exile, or if a card was in exile, that it could do things, or you could get cards out of exile, and so on. And it's kind of interesting because at the time, it was a little wacky to have this new zone invented for this mechanic, but now they happen to already have a zone for it, so it'd be interesting to revisit that, you know.
Awesome. Well, that's all for my portion at least. I'm not sure if Patrick has anything about himself, but I do appreciate your time and attention. Thanks, everybody.